welcome to another charity chat. I'm James Saunders. I'm a charity partner at Kingston Smith, and I'm joined today, as always, by my regular fellow cud chewers, Catherine Rustomji from Shakespeare, Martineau, and Charles Mesquita from Quilter, Cheviot. And the topic today is one that's close to my heart: accounting regulations. And just in the last week, progress has been reported to be made on an international accounting standard for charities, which will be new. To date, all specific charity accounting regulations are made by local jurisdictions, i.e. the charity SORP, the Statement of Recommended Practice in the UK, is the UK's accounting guidance for charities rather than anything to do with international. So this is also all going on at the same time as debates take place in the UK about whether larger charities should fall into the category of public interest entities in the UK for financial reporting purposes, and therefore those charities should be included in the same reporting framework that would apply to the biggest multinational corporate organisations. So there could potentially be some significant changes to the financial reporting landscape for charities approaching with some speed. And the question really has to be, for the majority of charities in the UK, is there really any benefit to following what could be an international charity accounting standard rather than the existing UK regulations that are in place? So given all of that, Catherine, I think it might be worth coming back down to earth with a bit of a more basic question, if you like, of do you read charity accounts? And if so, what do you look for and what do you find useful in them?
Yeah, I think it probably won't surprise you, James. I do read them, but I read the words more than the numbers. So I think for me, I'm looking at who are the trustees, what changes have they had, what's the senior team, the annual report, the public benefit reporting, any disclosures that have been put in there, anything that stands out as an item that needs to be explained. Those are the sorts of things I would focus on. I think I can navigate the numbers side of it, and I think it is useful having the previous year so you can compare the two side by side. But I do wonder whether my sort of in some ways intimidation of looking at a complex set of accounts, because I think charity accounts are very complicated compared to other entities that are much more money in, money out, straightforward, and whether charity trustees would feel the same way. I wonder whether the international element could be quite intimidating for many UK charities who probably think, well, we have nothing at all to do with international trading or operations, therefore why should we be preparing it in that way? And sometimes I just wonder whether the accounting side of it has become so complex that that's maybe what's meaning that some charities are not preparing their accounts properly, are not filing them on time. Not quite sure.
Okay. Yes, thank you. And Charles, same to you. What do you read accounts? I know from previous discussions you do, but what do you find is useful? What do you look for?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit like Catherine. I think this is beginning to take a life of its own, and that does really concern me. And we might come on to cost, I think, because that's another element that I think is becoming a really big problem. I'm going to answer it in the capacity of three different individuals. One is my day job as an investment manager, and the answer is yes, very much so. But that's because having a better understanding of the organisation, getting behind the numbers, allows me to, I suppose, advise charities in a better basis on that. So yes, I do read them from that perspective, and I actually look to go back to for long-term trends and everything else, just to I suppose enrich my sort of knowledge of a particular organization. As a private individual, absolutely not. When I'm giving money, I don't go, oh, I must look at the report and accounts before I give any money. That's an emotional decision, either one that I feel very strongly about an organization and what they're doing, or supporting somebody who's prepared to get off the backside and go off and do something, where you'll donate money. I think it's quite interesting as a trustee, and I sort of think, I mean, it's quite a cathartic exercise every year, but it also has become a very time-consuming exercise. But as a trustee, I look at the audit as a check and validation of what we're doing. from an independent person. So actually, to me, it's not the report and accounts that's the really valuable, but it's having the conversation with the auditor at the end of it. And I ask sort of questions like, are there anything that if you were sitting in my shoes, you'd be concerned about? And I suppose the final thing I would sort of say is, was there any reasons of concern of access to information?
So what we haven't touched on there really is whether, and this is another question, whether different charities should have different reporting standards based on, for example, in a crude example, size. Should a bigger charity be using a different set of accounting standards, or a different SORP, for example, than the smaller ones? Because the very biggest multi-million pound charity is effectively using the same accounting guidance, the SORP, as the very smallest, just over £1 million income charity. So do you think that there is any value in breaking the sector up into sections, or actually should charities all be held to the same standard regardless, so the status quo is appropriate? Charles, let's go with you first on that one.
So I think you turn it on its head and say, what is the purpose of the annual audit? And what are you trying to achieve out of it? And a lot of it actually comes down to costs. I mean, we've just been through a review, and the range of costs for a grant making charity with a turnover of about 2 million has been somewhere between £10,000 and £18,000, which is, to me, is quite a big range. But there are no, and I'm looking at that as being a relatively simple organization. And I think that the amount of stuff that we're having to do is over-engineered to the organization. And I think actually what you'd be better off doing is allowing organizations to make a choice. But even the independent examination is not particularly cost effective in the amount of work that somebody needs to do. So unfortunately, I look at it, every penny you're spending on governance, you're not spending on what the purpose of the charity is. Yeah. And I think if you tell people that you're spending huge amounts on governance, they start questioning about what you're doing, and you need that balance there. So I don't think there are any easy answers, but I think the problem is the way that we've had increased regulation means that the whole time we're trying to cover every eventuality and risk, rather than saying actually what's proportionate, and then trust people to make the right decision. Okay.
I mean, these regulations are particularly about the accounts rather than necessarily the assurance that goes with it, the audits and that sort of thing. So really, the questions kind of need to come back to what you expect from the accounts rather than the audit. Catherine, the new SORP that was the new statement of recommended practice for preparation of accounts, which is expected to be in effect in 2024, so not that far away. Mm-hmm. We're expecting it to have impact reporting in there somewhere to add to what you described as the narrative reporting, if you like. And it's, the accounts have always, the trustees report as this last iteration of the SORP has said, tell us what you plan to do, tell us what you did, and tell us how you assessed how well you did against your plans. I mean, that very much, looking at outputs. There'll be more of that in there. But there's also going to be now EDI and ESG, two big social developments from the last 3 or 4 years that I think we're all expecting there to be more about. Equity or equality, diversity, inclusivity on the one hand, and then environmental social government on the other, particularly on the EDI, the inclusivity side, and particularly on the ESG, the environment, your impact on the environment, the impact environment on you. Do you think they'd be useful to see more of either or both of those in the narrative section of the trustees report, and also potentially somehow putting a monetary value on any of that?
I'm not a big fan of either of those topics as an indicator of how well run is this charity, how effective is this charity, what difference is this charity making as a result of its activities. I mean, I think EDI is a big focus. I know I've done a lot of work with clients around the Charity Governance Code and them focusing on the EDI elements, and very willing to recognise that they need to do better and that they will do better, but I'm not sure we're quite ready to then start reporting on it just for the sake of scoring points and being virtuous and being able to say how lovely we are. And the same on ESG. I just think sometimes the environment side of things, not every charity is an environmental charity. And I sometimes just feel as though charities are either hijacked just to feel bad about pretty much everything they're doing. So whatever they're doing, they think is a good thing. Well, that's having a negative impact on the environment. Have you thought about that? And actually, you can't have, all goodness. There needs to be some give and take. And I just think whether it's the accounting reporting, I think it's almost that approach that it should, I think, have started with think small first. So to build up from the smaller charities and then start to layer on the additional reporting that we need from these more, multi-million-pound international charities. Very much so, I think it's appropriate for them to have more detailed reporting, but I'm not sure it necessarily translates to all charities because there's such a variety of size and scale.
So perhaps a more of a modular approach to financial reporting, where you pick the pieces or pick the relevant guidance that is applicable to you on particular areas. So if you are an environmental focused charity, campaigning and the like, and fundraising, you can pick a module about that. But if you're not, and the environmental impact on you is limited, then you can kind of leave that bit out.
Yes.
But I think you've got, I think there's a whole lot of stuff that's in the report account. Sorry, I've got a Labrador joining me. I think there are a whole lot of stuff, a bit like public benefit. Why do you need to make a statement in your report accounts? Put it on your website. There are certain things that, to my mind, EDI would be another one. I think it's a really important issue, and I think it's good to challenge. And maybe what we need just is once a year, just having a checklist of things of just, have you been through and checked? Because you do want people to not forget about it and not just sort of say, well, we've done it and then move on. It's a bit like the governance code. Does that really need to be in the report and accounts? If you want people to read your report and accounts, I mean, I've just got one in front of me at the moment, which is 51 pages for an organization with a turnover of just under 4 million. And you go, why? And I'm a bit like Catherine. I actually find that the trustee report is the really useful bit, because that hopefully gives them a mood and method of what's been going on. But does it really need to capsulate in 51 pages? I mean, you lose the will to live reading some of these documents. And don't get me wrong, because people put a lot of effort into it, and you just think, actually, if we shortened it, perhaps we should actually just say your trustee report should be no more than 4 pages. But it would be a really good discipline.
Does that include the numbers, or are you just talking about the narrative section?
That includes the numbers. I think it was 32 pages for the trustee report, which included 4 pages for the auditors.
The auditors report, yes.
Which seems to have got longer and longer and longer. And you think, why does it need to be in there? Why can't that just be on the website or something like that? I mean, is it really? Because I can't remember the last time I read the auditor's statement. I'm sure there's a reason I should.
I think that's very relevant. I mean, the audit statement is a clear example. I can just about remember when it was 1 page long, but as you say, it's up to 4 pages now. A lot of that is new regulations coming in, and I do wonder actually often. New regulations come in, when more gets put into the accounts, the audit reports, the narrative, the text, all that sort of stuff. Do you remember seeing anything that you think immediately could just come out straight away? There's something in there that, it's been brought in, and because of course no one ever thinks about what they can take out of accounts when these new regulations come in. So the last update, the new SORP came into some accounts. I'm sure there's loads of stuff in there that is not relevant anymore, but no one's thought to take it out. Is there anything that immediately springs to mind about stuff that you just think is relevant now?
Sorry, I'd change it the other way around. Anything that you put in every year should not be in your report and accounts. Do you see? I mean, well, I'm thinking more text rather than numbers, because numbers you need to have it in a set format. But certainly for the trustee report, if you're just literally cut and pasting each year, then take it out, put it on your website.
And on the numbers, then, I mean, Charles, I will continue with you, because you do use the accounts for your data probably more than Catherine does. But what do you focus on with the numbers? Clearly, the investment values, if you like, fundraising obviously would be important there. Do you feel that the numbers are, for someone who works in the profession, in charity sector, do you feel the numbers are understandable at the basic level?
I think it depends on the organisation, if I'm really honest.
And that shouldn't be the case, really, because the whole
No.
point about part of the SORP and part of the accounting guidance is always about making sure that everyone has a level playing field. Comparability is a huge part of any accounting guidance. So actually, that immediate answer, it depends on the organisation. It probably messes the SORP up in the first place.
Well, I was looking, I mean, this particular one I'm looking at the moment, they've got one for the sort of donations and fundraising and everything else, which has got government income stream in there. And then they've got one for charity activities. And I have to say, I assume the charitable activities is that this is a business that is charging for its activities or being supported, and it's just separated the two. But again, having only taken a skim read over it, I'm not sure I can tell you very easily of how their funding sources. And what I'm trying to do is look at the predictability of it from a, because if you're doing it from an investment perspective, because that's what you're doing, you're looking at staff costs and what that proportion is, but that's relatively easy. The other thing in the accounts actually that I have mixed thing is about giving people salary ranges. Because if you're a small organization of 4, you can work out exactly what everybody's being paid. And I'm not sure that's very healthy. And then you get the sort of exercise, oh, well, if we're going to do a salary review, let's go and have a look at what everybody else is being paid. And so you just get this sort of escalation, oh, well, we're a better organization than so-and-so. So I think one has to certainly think about the causes and effects of the information that you're supplying.
Okay. Catherine, anything to add on the numbers at all?
I'm less, I think, decisive than Charles. When I look at accounts, I can never see what should come out. I just think there's too much in here. You can't see the wood for the trees. And whether it's a sort of almost the going concern piece of, I want to know where this charity is right here, right now, and where it plans to be next year. That's is it still going to be here? What are its challenges? Yeah.
Maybe next time we'll have a subject on the going concern, because that's
that is the danger, that in the end you can't see the wood for the trees. Yeah. The important messages, the most important messages, are lost. I mean, the going concern point is clear. There's a chunk in the accounting policies about going concerns, but it's after the primary statements, it's after all the narrative trust. It is not easy to pinpoint exactly what the most important elements are these days with, as Charles was saying, a 50, 60, 70 page document. If you want to get to the nub of the numbers, the accounts, you've got to be very precise and know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you both very much for your contributions. And that is our time up for this week. Thanks to our viewers for tuning in as well. And if this prompts any thoughts, do get in touch. If you've got any suggestions for future topics, please get in touch. But otherwise, we'll say thank you very much, goodbye, and see you in the next session.